Hey guys, this is Devendra Rai from MTech Second Sem. Today I'm going to explain the topic inheritance. First of all, we need to understand what is inheritance. Inheritance in biological terms, we can say it is a process by which child acquires the characteristics or properties of its parents. Similarly, in the C++ language, a class can derive its properties and characteristics to another class, and this whole phenomenon is known as inheritance. Inheritance is the most important feature of object oriented programming. So, there are basically two classes. One is the class that drives another class. So, there are two classes. One is base class, another is derived class. Base class is the parent class from which the properties are inherited to another class called as base class. As shown in this figure, class A is a base class which gives its properties and characteristics to another class, that is class B, which is derived class. Now, question arises in our mind why we use inheritance. To understand it, we need to understand it by an example. We need to create classes bus, car, and truck, and we need to use three different functions in individually of them, that are fuel amount, capacity, and brake supply. So, we created three different classes that are bus, car, and truck, and writed code or function. We writed function fuel amount, capacity, and apply brake in three of them individually. That would be difficult for us. It has the chances of error and data redundancy. To reduce it, we uses the concept of inheritance. So when we use inheritance, we created a class called vehicle and writed three these functions fuel amount, capacity, and apply brake in it. And we drive three different classes that are bus, car, and truck from it. So they have these three functions which can be accessible for all these derived classes, as shown in the figure. Here the time taken is reduced, or we can say code is reusable. The data redundancy is decreased, and the chances of error are very less. So we use inheritance. Now we need to understand modes of inheritance. There are three different modes of inheritance. public mode, protected mode, and private mode. In public mode, if we derive a subclass from the public base class, then the public member of the base class will become public in derived class and protected member of the base class will become protected member in the derived class. In the case of protected mode, if we derive a subclass from a protected base class, then both public member and protected members of the base class become protected in the derived class. In the case of private mode, if we derive a class from private base class, then both public member and protected member of the base class will become private in the derived class. Let us all understand by an example. As example shown, there is a class A which has three different integers that are x, y, and z, which are public, protected, and private respectively. And we have three different derived classes that are B, C, and D that are public, protected, and private respectively. In class B, that is public to A, X is public so accessible, Y is protected, Z is not accessible. In class C, that is protected to A, X is protected, Y is also protected, Z is not accessible for C. In case of D, that is private to A, X, Y are private and Z is not accessible. So we can say These modes can be summarized as shown in this table. As the base class member is public and the types of inheritance is public, so it's public. If the base class member is public and types of inheritance is protected, so it's protected. If the base class member is public and types of inheritance is private, then it's private. For the protected, public and protected are protected, private is private. In the case of private, all are hidden or not accessible. Now we move forward for the types of inheritance. So there are five basic types of inheritance, that are single inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and hybrid or virtual inheritance. And there is also a sixth, which is a special case of hybrid or virtual inheritance, that is multipath inheritance. First, we need to understand it one by one. First is single inheritance. In single inheritance, a class is allowed to inherit from only one class, or we can say one class is inherited by one base class only. As shown in the figure, class A is a base class and class B is a derived class from it. So there is only one parent class and only one derived class. Now, second is multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance is a feature of C++ where a class can inherit more than one class. From more than one class. So in this case, we have one derived class from two base classes. So one child class from two parent classes. As shown in the figure, class A is a derived class from two parent classes, that are B and C. Now the third one is multi-level inheritance. In this type of inheritance, a derived class can be created from another derived class. This series can move further. For example, in this figure, class C is a parent class and class B is a derived class. So class B, which is a derived class, can also drive another class, that is class A, and this series can move further. Fourth one is hierarchical inheritance. In this type of inheritance, more than one derived class can be created from a single base class. So here the class G is a single base class that has created two derived classes, that is class B and class E. And now class B also created two more classes, that is class A and class C. On the other hand, class E also created two classes, that is class D and class F. And this whole phenomenon is known as hierarchical inheritance. Fifth one is hybrid or virtual inheritance. In this type of inheritance, there is a combination of more than one type of inheritance. For example, combination of hierarchical inheritance and multiple inheritance is shown in this figure. Hierarchical inheritance is shown by class F that has produces two classes, that is class B and class E. Now class B produces two classes, that is class A and class C. On the other hand, multiple inheritance is shown by class G that has produces class E. So there is the combination of hierarchical and multiple inheritance, and there is a derived class, that is class E, which has two parent classes, that is class F and class G. Now sixth, that is a special type of virtual inheritance called as multipath inheritance. In this case, a derived class with two base classes, and these all three base classes have one common base class, and this phenomenon is called as multipath inheritance. Let us understand with an example. In this case, class D is derived class from two base classes, that are class B and class C, and all of them is derived from class A. So we can say class A is a base class which drives the class B, D and C. Now we move further for the advantages of inheritance. The main advantage of inheritance that it helps in the reusability of code. It saves a lot of time. It makes the programmer structure readable. So the short and simple program is concise and reliable, which can be easily debugged. Due to code reusability, development time of any software is reduced. So it takes less time to create a software. Now we move further for the disadvantages of inheritance. There are not much disadvantages, but one of the main disadvantage is that two classes, that is base and derived class, get tightly coupled. That means one cannot be used independently of each other. Also, with time of maintenance, adding new feature in the base class as well as derived class are required changes. So thank you so much.